Hello, this is Tyrell. Thank you for joining me here on the Sound of Midnight. God bless you. Thank you for joining me here on the conference line. I'll be getting started in just one moment. Welcome to the Sound of Midnight. God bless you. Thank you for joining me here on Facebook Live. Those who are joining us on the conference line, thank you again for joining me tonight. I am continually talking tonight about from my dad's book, I Feel Good. And as I started preparing for sharing from my dad's book, I knew from the beginning that it was going to take some personal, me needing to be vulnerable, me sharing some personal things about myself. I knew it would be a journey that would take me sort of into some deep, uncharted places for me before. So as I began to talk about this particular book at the beginning of the series, I mentioned that I was in my shift season when I started the Sound of Midnight. I started it on the principle or on the three components of the sound. At midnight, Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises, and then the shift. So it's the sound and then the shift. Suddenly there was an earthquake, and the foundations of the prison where they were shaken. That's the shift. So it's the sound, the shift, and the setting free. And as I got into, again, this particular portion, I realized how I would tie in the sound. I didn't realize how I would tie in the sound, the shift, and the setting free to my dad's book. But I knew for me that I was in my shift season. I was in that place of shifting. So the sound being the declaration, the speaking it into the atmosphere. So I had done that earlier on with the Sound of Midnight, really speaking and declaring things in the atmosphere for my life, for my ministry, for me in my personal realm, for my health. A lot of what I talked about during that time was the sound, what we are putting into the atmosphere. And then we moved into this shift. And the scripture reads, and suddenly there was a great earthquake so that the foundation of the prison was shaken. That is the season that I am in right now, that shift. And the shift sometimes is hard because the shift begins to break up the foundations. My having share, or my having to share even of myself intimately, is shaken the foundation. As I began to read my dad's book and began to deal with some things that I have been having dealt with for 47 years, my foundation was shaken. Things that I have believed, things that I've grown up on, things that I've held to for a long time. Those things in my life right now are being shaken. Those things are being shifted. It's the foundation that is being shaken. When I think about my past, and I realize for my foundation to be shaken, for me to shift during this particular season, that I would have to deal with some things that I've never dealt with. So I think back when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I wanted to learn how to ride a bike. My friend Georgie, his father was teaching him how to ride a bike. My best friend Charles, his father was teaching him how to ride a bike, and I did not have that. Thank God I had my nephew Dwayne. I'll talk about that another time, how my nephew taught me how to ride a bike. But I began to think back to that time, and for 47 years, every time I would have a particular thought around my dad or around a situation like that, I always stayed trapped. I always stayed yeah, trapped in sort of that feeling of 7 years old. What I felt at 7, I also felt at 17, and then I also felt at 27. I was still having that same feeling at 37. I was then even having that feeling at 47. So in order for me to be set free from that, the foundation had to be shaken. And I'm in that place right now in my life where my foundation in several areas is being shaken. So my dad's book is I Feel Good. And as I began to prepare for it, I looked up the definition. I, me, myself. I is the only letter in the alphabet that when it is used as a word is capitalized. I am special. I'm talking about me. And sometimes I want the responsibility of feeling good to be placed on somebody else. I'll say that again. Sometimes I want the responsibility of feeling good to be placed on somebody else. I want my feeling good to be someone else's responsibility. But the responsibility for my wellness, for me feeling good, is mine. So if I am going to feel good, it has to be my responsibility. So and then the second word is feel. I have a sense, I have an awareness of what's going on. I feel good. When I feel good, I am well. I feel good because I also feel God. I'm aware of God's presence in my life. I'm aware that God is inside of me. I'm aware that God is in this situation with me. So because I am aware that God is with me, then I can feel good. My dad's book highlights one reason to feel good, and he uses Psalms 23:4. And that reads, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And if I could read just a short excerpt from his book, it says, In the days of the psalmist, traveling was dangerous. Many wild beasts roamed the areas where humans inhabited. David reports that when he was a shepherd boy, while keeping his father's sheep, a lion and bear attacked the sheep and attacked him. But he was successful in killing both the lion and the bear. These wild animals roamed the pathways and the mountainsides. Often when they were up in the hills and in the mountains, their shadows of all of these animals roaming the fields, the shadows of the animals would be cast down into the valley and the shepherds, where the shepherds and the travelers were. And for this was a signal of danger. But David, having been successful in killing both the lion and the bear, for which he gave God credit, he proclaims, even though we walk through the valley of the shadows of death, we will fear no evil because God is with us. So as I began to read all that my dad had written, I began to think about some things that's happening in my own life, some things that began to go on, and I realized that all of these things that's happening around me, all these things that are happening to me are just shadows. So on top of this hill, on top of the mountainside, it could be a dog, it could be a wolf. I don't know what type of animal it is, but because the animal is on the higher plane, it's casting a shadow down. And sometimes when the shadows are cast down, the shadows look larger than what the animal actually is. So I'm seeing this big shadow. I'm seeing this big thing hanging over me. And it's causing fear. But David said, I will not fear because I understand that God is with me. So although there's this big thing up there, although there's this big unknown ahead of me that's casting a shadow, that's causing sometimes anxiety, causing sometimes some dis-ease, but I have to recognize that it's just a shadow. So in my personal life right now, and I have been dealing with 3 immediate deaths. So about 3 weeks ago, my aunt passed away, and directly after her funeral, then my cousin passed away, and then I got back from his funeral on Saturday and found out Sunday that a close colleague of mine had passed away. So I have been dealing with this burden, this depression actually, and I wasn't even able to grieve what I would say properly. So I was going through all of these emotions, and as I was preparing for tonight, I was asking God, how can I feel good? And God let me know that it's just a shadow. Yes, the loss hurts, and I'm gonna miss my friend, I'm gonna miss my aunt, I'm gonna miss my cousin. Yes, those relationships will no longer be, I will no longer have those in a tangible form. And there's some anxiety, there's some fear around that, there's some fear of the unknown. But I can feel good because I understand today that even in this place, even in this situation, that I can begin to shift my own environment. As I was preparing for tonight, I realized, I've said it before in the past, but it's not until you're in a situation yourself that the word becomes life and the word becomes light. So I always said, once we are doing the things that we love, once we do the things that we're driven to, those things that are on our purpose, it causes in itself the atmosphere to change. So I began to feel good because even as I prepared for tonight, I began to feel God. So whatever your art is, whatever ways you express yourself to God, if you would put that in practice, even in those low places, even in the places where there's shadows, even when we're walking through the valley, we don't have to fear. We don't have to be built up with all the anxiety and the anxiousness, because I can rest, I can have peace because I understand tonight who God is in my life. The gentleman that my colleague that I mentioned that had passed away, always said something as we taught our classes together. He would always tell me to trust the process. He would tell it to everyone. As we're going through what we're going through, trust the process. And I said, but I don't like this process. But this process doesn't feel good. But I don't want to deal with this process. But I've learned even tonight that if I can trust the process, I am learning that I'm able then to trust God. If sometimes although I don't like it, although it's not easy, trusting the process really means that I'm trusting the God of the process, because I realize I don't have to go through what I'm going through on my own. I don't have to walk through this valley of this shadow by myself. I can trust that God is with me. And because he is with me, I am able to feel good, even in the midst of the shadows, even in the midst of the darkness, even in the midst of the valley. I can trust God. I can trust the process because I trust God. Thank you tonight for joining me. I'm soliciting your prayers. This has been a rough time for me the last few days. This adjustment to living without my friend. As we taught together, we were known as the dynamic duo. And I always said he was Batman and I was Robin. So I know and I feel it like I've lost my Batman. But my bishop was talking to me, and I'm trusting the process, because this means that it's time for me to be the Batman, and the fear, that anxiety that I've dealt with around that of having to step up. Someone mentioned filling his shoes, and I'm like, I can't do that. That's beyond me. And then I won't fill his shoes, but I will walk in what God has called me to. That I declare. I will walk in what God has called me to do. But trusting this process and getting through this has been a difficult place for me. So I solicit your prayers over the next couple of days. When you think about it, I'd say, God bless Tyrell, touch him, whatever. Send love and send some positive energy my way. I thank you. Just before we go tonight, a quick word of prayer. God, I just thank you for all that you're doing in and through us. Dear God, even in our valleys, even as we walk through what seems like the shadow of death, dear God, I'm not fearing tonight. I'm trusting tonight. Tonight, dear God, I declare that I am victorious even in this. Dear God, I shift the way I think about it. I shift the way I feel about it. I shift the way, dear God, I interact, dear God, with the thoughts that I had before. So God, tonight, infuse within me your power, your presence, dear God. Let me be aware. I'm able to feel good because I'm aware. I can sense your presence. Dear God, and my brothers and sisters, as they're dealing with their various shadows, they're dealing with their various struggles, the things that they're going through. Also, dear God, walk with my brother, walk with my sister. Be, dear God, with those that are connected with me. Dear God, be with them, strengthen them. Dear God, let them feel the love that you have placed even inside of them, that as it radiates out, dear God, they may be able, dear God, to receive love back. Dear God, we ask you now tonight, continue to bless and keep us until we meet again. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. God bless you. I will see you here next week on The Sound of Midnight. Good night.